And here we
All right. So I'll admit all and we can. Here we go. Hello, everyone. While we're waiting for folks to log on, I'm going to ask everyone to type into the chat box where you are geographically and what's one word to describe what you're feeling as it relates to this webinar. So we're going to let people flow in from the waiting room. And hello, we've got New Jersey, Toronto, that's great, Idaho, woo, Cleveland. Tell us where you are geographically. Tell us how you're feeling, one word, while we're waiting for everyone to log on tonight. We've got people all over the place. This is great. Excited. I'm excited too. LA. Nice. Curious. I like that. Inspired. Nice. Very nice. We're just letting everyone in from the waiting room. And I'm asking everyone to let us know where you are in the world and how you're feeling tonight. One word to describe how you feel as it relates to this webinar. And we'll begin in a minute or so. All right, we've just hit the 50 mark. So as people are coming in, I am going to start. My name is Nicole Anderson, and welcome to I should just say today, because we have people from all over the country. I oversee alumni career programs and Tufts professional networks for alumni and students. Welcome to the webinar, Setting Clear and Focused Goals for Professional and Personal Success, featuring Arielle Sadan, Tufts alum and executive coach and owner of Revel&Awe. We have two main goals in alumni career services. We present programs like this, including webinars and networking events. We've started to be in person again, and that doesn't mean just on the Tufts campus, it means all over the country. We serve all alumni from all schools, and we're starting again to get back in person. So please check the Alumni and Friends website calendar. Arielle will be back in March for a fantastic session on leading with influence. And she'll be at the June reunion facilitating a session. So if you want to meet her in person and tap her brain, you'll get to see her there. We'll post links to the April and May webinars in the next couple of weeks. Our second goal in alumni career programs is to foster connections between alumni and students, including The Herd, a resource for alumni to alumni networking and mentoring that currently includes 3,000 active alumni users. We'll drop the link into the chat box now. For today's webinar, we'll be presenting for about 50 minutes. My colleague from the Career Center, Susanna Kren, is joining me as co-host today. We will try our best to address your questions during the session. You can type your questions in the chat box, and Arielle, my colleague Susanna, and I will do our best to address them. If we don't get to your questions, you're welcome to stay on the call. Arielle will take questions for about 20 minutes after the webinar, and she'll drop her email into the chat box so you can reach out to her after today. We are recording this webinar. It will be posted on our YouTube playlist in about a week. And finally, before I introduce our speaker, I want to acknowledge that the Office of Alumni Engagement has a community values statement, which Susanna will post in the chat now. So let me introduce our presenter. Arielle Sadan is a Tufts alum and, as I mentioned, executive coach and owner of Revel&Awe. She loves identifying what makes people tick and figure out how to help them tick better. In fact, we were doing this, she was helping me tick better right before we started the webinar. In other words, she loves to help her clients learn how to become the best versions of themselves. As a certified professional coach, she specializes in helping early and mid-level professionals develop their leadership skills, carve out fulfilling career paths, and live into their potential. She received her professional coaching certification from the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching and is credentialed by the International Coach Federation. Now I will hand the presentation over. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's always so fun for me to be here with fellow alumni. I recognize that I don't do enough to be engaged on my own. We're all so busy, and the whole mode of engaging with the alumni community, I feel, has shifted so much. And so being here and having an opportunity to speak with all of you is really a gift for me, because I get to hang out with fellow jumbos. So I'm happy to be here. And today we're going to talk all about goal setting. For those of you who haven't checked out or weren't at the last webinar, we talked a little bit about goal setting and a little bit about prioritization, but today we're really going to dive on in. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly. A few things before I start, actually. So as Nicole said, please make frequent use of the chat box. I'm going to keep my eye on it. I love seeing what resonates, what sticks, what questions come up. So please feel free to drop any thoughts or whatever is on your mind right in there. It also helps me feel like I'm not speaking out into the ether. And so for that, if anybody else wants to turn on their cameras, I invite you to do so. I love seeing your faces. I like seeing how you're engaging. And sometimes I ask for a thumbs up in case something isn't visible. So feel free to give me some hints along the way that you are following along. Cool. So thank you for the wonderful introduction, Nicole. My name is Arielle Sadan, as she mentioned. I am an executive coach. I've been running my own coaching business for about 5 years now. And I have really loved the experience of getting to work with people at different levels of their careers and helping them blossom even more. So many of my clients are folks who have a vision for where they want to be, how they want to be successful, how they want that success to look. And I get to come and be a support system to enable that to become a reality. So I work with individuals. I also work with companies and their employees to really create that alignment between where they are right now and that future vision that people have for their success. Now, for today's workshop and today's goals, we're going to start by talking about some basics. Why are goals so important? Why are they so helpful? We're going to talk about some of the most common goal setting frameworks and go into one of the common ones that I see frequently come up for my clients called OKRs. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. That's totally cool. We're going to do an introduction to it today. We're also going to talk a little bit about how we can use this more corporate type of goal framework for our own lives, whether that's for professional development or for personal. We're going to have an opportunity to define some of our own goals to create more clarity for ourselves and maybe even some, dare I say, excitement around those things. And then we're going to focus on priorities and how do we figure out what comes first. Sound good? Thumbs up? Okay, cool. I see some nods. I see some thumbs. That makes me very happy. Thanks, guys. Okay, so first and foremost, why do we set goals? The long and short of it is actually clarity. It helps us figure out where we want to focus, and it allows us to focus on the things that really matter to us, maybe even to identify for the first time what is actually important to us. And in setting goals, we can get really aligned with ourselves and also communicate more openly with others about where we want to go. What do we need to do to move closer to that direction? And what kind of support might we need from the people around us to help us achieve those goals? Sometimes we can use goals to set new behaviors or build new habits. We often see this around New Year's with New Year's resolutions. We want to build a healthier lifestyle. We want to go to the gym membership skyrocket. We have this goal to build that healthier lifestyle because we want to trigger some new behaviors. And today we're going to talk about why sometimes that doesn't go so well and figure out ways to make it go better. We can also use goals to motivate ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to stretch our skills, our abilities, our knowledge. And in setting goals, we can build more momentum to move closer to achieving the things that we want, and also sometimes to become more of the person that we want to become, that maybe we don't feel like we are right now. And I often go back to the New Year's gym going resolution because it feels really, I don't want to say universal, but a lot of people go through that. I know I certainly have. So I am by no means advocating that everybody needs to have a health-oriented gym going goal. But if you have, I totally relate to that. So some of the things that can make goal setting effective, because as we know, sometimes we have an idea of what we want to achieve, and sometimes we do a good job of following through, and sometimes less so. So there are 5 things that really make goal setting more effective. The first is clarity. Like we said, that's the one word that I really associate with goal setting. And it becomes really important because when goals are clear and specific, it helps to eliminate a lot of the confusion that can come up when we set more general goals, right? For instance, I'll go back to the gym resolution, right? I want to be healthier. What does it mean to be healthier? How does that show up? How can we define that? How can we be more specific? How can we be clearer in order to give ourselves more tactical ways to approach that goal? Kind of hard to figure out how to be healthier if we don't know how that might manifest. The second thing that makes goal setting more effective is challenge, right? Taking opportunities to stretch ourselves, to stretch just beyond our comfort zone, stretches your mind. It encourages you to think bigger. It helps you really think about having a winning mindset or growth mindset. Carol Dweck has a great TED Talk and book called Around Growth Orientation and Growth Mindset, which is all about giving ourselves the opportunity to continue developing. We're never quite a finished product. So challenging ourselves and using goals to challenge ourselves is a great opportunity to really make those goals more effective. The third thing is commitment. If you're not committed to following through on your goal, then you're probably going to have a hard time accomplishing it. The fourth thing is feedback. And this is how you know if you're on the right track or not. That feedback can come in a lot of different forms. It can be external feedback that you're gathering from other people. It can be internal feedback that you're giving to yourself. It can also be tracking metrics if your goal has a quantitative metric associated with it, which we'll talk about also. And as we collect feedback about our goals and how we're progressing, we can adjust our expectations and maybe switch tactics as we're continuing to pursue that end result. And the fifth thing is task complexity. So it's important to remember that things that are really easy to accomplish, they're not so challenging, they might not stretch us, they may or may not be easy to commit to, but making things just a little bit more challenging, making things stimulating is going to help keep us engaged along the pathway to achieving our goals. Now, one of the most common goal setting methods is called SMART goals. And I see a few of you on my screen. Raise your hands if you've heard of SMART goals before. Lots of hands, but some also not hands. So if you've never heard of SMART goals before, that's totally cool. I introduce SMART goals to clients at pretty much every age from, early 20s to late 60s and beyond. So if you've never heard of it before, That's totally cool. Welcome. SMART goals stands, it's an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Now, what does that actually mean? Specific means that it's specific, detailed, and usually that means it addresses the 5 W's: the what, the why, the who's got to be involved, where is it going to take place if there's some sort of location based around it, right? Are we going to the gym, for instance? And which things do we really need to be focusing on? Measurable, meaning there's some sort of KPIs there that we can keep track of. So how much are we trying to get done? How many times do we want to go somewhere? Sometimes we'll hear about goals around sales. So how much do we want to bring in terms of revenue? How do we really define success? That's really what measurable is all around, all about. How do we define and measure our success? Then it needs to be achievable. That's the A. So that means it should be realistic, something that is within our grasp. It might be challenging to grasp it, and it should be, but it's still something that is realistic. So full disclosure, big moment of vulnerability here. I can't run a mile. So it's probably not realistic for me to try and run a marathon in the next month, right? Like if I can't run a mile, I certainly can't run 26.2. Is it maybe achievable longer term? Maybe. But it's probably not realistic to do that in the next month. Then it has to be relevant, right? So is this actually something that I can be connected to? Is it relevant for me? So if I wanted to think about ways to be healthier and I broke a leg, then running probably isn't going to be relevant to me. I should probably find a goal that will allow me to focus on my health in other ways. Maybe healing is a good place to start. And then time bound, right? This is something that we oftentimes forget when we're setting goals. This is so important because we need a deadline. How do we know if we achieved the goal if we never know when to stop measuring our progress? So when we think about crafting SMART goals, following this formula is a really great way to figure out a really specific, measurable, relevant, achievable, then relevant, and time-bound structure so that we can know if we're moving in the right direction. That's what it comes down to. Now, a SMART goal might end up seeming really long. I mean, this acronym feels really long, but the goal doesn't have to be. So for instance, I'll go back to the gym example, right? It could be, I want to go to the gym with my gym buddy 3 times a week for the next 3 months. That's it, just one sentence, right? Pretty straightforward. I'm specific. I know what I want to do. I want to go to the gym. I know who I want to do it with my gym buddy. And maybe I already have one and maybe I don't, and maybe I don't need one, but I personally like the accountability. I know which gym I'm going to go to because I already belong to one. But if you have a different place you want to go to, that's cool too. It's realistic. I can definitely squeeze 3 times a week into my schedule. I've got 20-30 minutes a few times a week. It's relevant, right? It connects to my desire to be healthier and more fit, and it's time bound, right? I know I'm going to go 3 times a week for the next 3 months. And at the end of 3 months, I can kind of check off if I went 3 times a week every week. That's what the formula comes down to. Relatively straightforward because it is a formula. So you can kind of plug and play and see how that fits for you. But we're not going to end with SMART goals. So hold that thought. One of the ways that I love thinking about goal setting is on what is called a wheel of life. And a wheel of life is what you see here. It's this circle. It's a wheel broken down into anywhere from 6 to sometimes even 10 sections of your life. And that covers everything from your physical area to your emotional or spiritual areas, finances and money, love life, family life, kids, your intellectual and like the things that you do for learning. So all these different areas of our lives. And I love this because it helps us identify some of the things that we feel like there could be improvement. Now, there's always room for improvement in every area of our lives. Perfection is not real. It's just what we think is real, something that we need to strive for. So there's always room for improvement. And so if you look at a wheel of life, and you can do a quick Google search, there are a million different versions of these images online. It encourages you to rate each area on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is really, really bad, or really unsatisfactory, I should say, and 10 is awesome. I don't need to change anything there right now. Maybe in the future, but right now I feel really satisfied with that. And based on how you feel about the different areas of your life, you might say, well, my money and finance, taking this wheel, I'm feeling like a 6 right now, but I want it to be a 7. And then you can come up with a goal to get to a 7. What does 7 look like? How do you measure success? When do you want to achieve it by? Can you be specific about what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve it, what it's going to take? And can you make it realistic for yourself? So taking that as an example, you can define your goals along any of these areas of your life. And doing so helps make sure that we're staying balanced, that we're focusing on a few different areas and not over committing to one particular area of our life at any given time and over indexing there. And SMART goals is a good place to start. But for today, we're going to focus on something a little bit different. We're going to focus on OKRs. And I love OKRs, partly because I think it's kind of an underrated tool. Has anybody here heard of objectives and key results as a goal setting structure? Hands if you got them. I see a lot of head shaking, which I love, which means that I get to teach you something new. So OKRs, it stands for objectives and key results, as you can see here. And basically what it is, it's a goal setting framework at the very basic level. And what it does is it helps us to define, align, and execute on a company's desired outcomes. What happens if you don't work for a company that uses OKRs? We will get there. But the idea behind OKRs is that it allows the company to cascade its goals down through every level of the organization, down to the individual, so that your individual goals and your individual progress and your individual contribution directly affects the company's success. That's what OKRs help us to do, is to know that we as an individual can directly impact whether or not our company is able to be successful in achieving the company level goals, which is actually a pretty mind-blowing idea, because I feel like so often as employees, as people, we don't know how our actions are affecting the environment around us, whether that's our team or our family or our community or our company. It's kind of like we're floating and we don't know what the results are of all of our efforts. We can be toiling every day, working so long, so hard, putting so much effort into our work, and without understanding the connection between our tasks, our own goals, and the company, sometimes it feels like we're just going down a dead-end street. And OKRs kind of help us to solve this. So here's kind of what do you call it? Like a diagram. That's the word. of how these OKRs cascade down, right? You have the company will set some big lofty goals, some big key results that they want to achieve and how they want to achieve that goal. Those will cascade down to the business units. Those business units OKRs are going to be subsets of the company's OKRs. And for example, that can look a few different ways, but let's say the company wants to, change the world. And that's their objective. We're going to talk about building objectives in a second. Let's say their objective is to change the world. Well, that's really lofty. It's really ambitious. And we don't understand how they want to do it yet. That's what the key results are for. And they can do it in a few different ways. Let's say one way is by making people happier. One way is by making the internet faster. And one way is by, making the next great Netflix show, for example. Then the business units might come in and say, well, as the finance team, how can we contribute to each of these key results? How can we make sure that the company has the financing to build the next great Netflix show? And they'll take on that objective and key result and then create their own objective and key result that will support that initiative. And it cascades down. Now, how do we even build OKRs? Because we talked about SMART goals, and that feels very straightforward, right? SMART, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. That formula makes a lot of sense. OKRs are a little bit more amorphous when you start. The key qualities of an objective are that they are aspirational. They are these big, lofty goals. Sometimes people might refer to them as BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goal. That's something that comes up a lot in business school for some reason. These BHAGs, these big goals, they want to change the world. And it's so awesome, inspiring, but super vague, right? So these objectives, they are not measurable. They are super aspirational, and maybe they feel totally out of reach and maybe even out of touch. So they are not achievable, and they don't, or at least they don't seem achievable. They are not measurable. They are not time-bound. They are not any of the SMART things, certainly not specific. And we usually think about, we want to create some sort of time bounding for it, but they don't go into the objectives themselves, but we think about them from that perspective. Quarterly is a really common review period. So oftentimes when people think about OKRs, they kind of subset them into quarterly goals. That's food for thought, but you can decide on whatever time frame works for you. Now, we want to be careful not to set too many objectives, because that can feel very overwhelming. So if we think back to the wheel of life, I say 3 areas that you want to focus on, 3 objectives that you want to think about. That's a great place to start. Once you start adding more to that, it can feel very overwhelming, and we've got enough going on without trying to push ourselves to achieve more, do more, grow more in so many different areas all at once. I'm going to take you guys through an exercise of building your own OKRs in just a quick second. So before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about how to define strong key results. These are the things that are measurable. These are the things that have the defined timeline. And these are the things that are outcome focused, meaning that we are really clear about what success is going to look like once we achieve the goal. So we'll go back to my gym example again. I can't believe I go back to the gym example all the time. But let's say my objective is to be my healthiest self, right? Vague, big, hairy, audacious goal, be my healthiest self. What does that even mean? Well, I'm going to define some key results so that I can figure some of that out. So one thing that I might say is, in the next quarter, I'll have gone to the gym 25 times. Does that mean that I necessarily need to figure out a weekly cadence? No, but it allows me to figure out, okay, in the next 12 weeks or so, I want to go 25 times. That's 2.5, 2-ish times a week, more or less, roughly. So that's one key result. I can set up my 3 most important doctor's appointments, right? I haven't gone to the dentist. I haven't gone to do my annual. I haven't gone to do whatever it is, right? I'm going to set up my 3 most important doctor's appointments in this quarter. Great. That's another key result that I can think about. And then I can think about another one. I am going to eat 4 to 6 cups of vegetables every day, right? Go through the recommended nutritional guidelines. And that is something else that I can track. I can kind of check it off at the end of every day and say, did I do that? And over the next 3 months, I'll probably see some results from this. I'll probably move closer to fulfilling that ultimate objective that sounded pretty vague about being my healthiest self. But if I do all of these things consistently and actually make progress on them, I'm probably going to be the healthiest I've ever been. Now, why do OKRs work? And this is something that I really want to call out, because OKRs work really great in an organization for a few different reasons. One is they create that focus, right? When we know what the company is working towards, what the business unit is working towards, what our team is working towards, and what we are working towards and how we are contributing, we are on the ball, right? We are motivated to create that impact for ourselves and for all of the people around us. And there's a lot of buy-in. So that focus is so important. It's numbers driven, so it's really measurable. We can tell really quickly if we're on track or not. It builds transparency because we all know how our impact is going to be measured, and we want to know how we can continue to make that impact to contribute to the greater goals of the organization. And we've developed a culture in our organization, if we use OKRs, that we're all in the same boat, and we're all connected through this process. So when OKR processes and frameworks are used by the entire organization, it's part of how we communicate. It's part of how we set goals, how we think about goals, how we think about our own professional development, and how we think about the impact that we're making. So all of these things really help us get engaged into the company process and the company goals. But what happens if you don't work for a company that uses OKRs? Or what if you don't work for a company? What if you're on your own? Or what if you want to just use OKRs for yourself? That's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to send, I got this great resource. I did not come up with it myself. But there is a great article by James McCauley on Medium, which I'll also share with you. But he shared his template for OKRs, which I thought was just brilliant. So I'm going to walk you guys through it. And what you can do is you can open up the link, and if you go to File, Make a Copy, you can save one to your own Google Drive, or if you want to download it into Excel, you can also do that if you prefer to use Excel. Now he has his model in here, his template, and that's great for him that he wants to do all of that running and cycling. Great. Some of you might feel very equipped to follow that example. I do not relate to that as much. Like I said, can't run a mile yet, but it's a great example. So what you can do is kind of think about how you want to fill this in. And it all starts at the top in what is cell I2, which is the mission, right? Decide on your mission. And again, this can be about work, but it can also just be about your life in general. You're allowed to have a few different areas that you want to work on. And just because we're here at Alumni Career Services doesn't mean that you have to only be thinking about your career here. So figure out what your mission statement is going to be. And again, think about it on a specific timeline. I like the quarterly concept. I think it's manageable. So right now we're kicking off March tomorrow, and 3 months from that will be March, April, end of May. So where do you want to be on May 30th? 30 days has September, April 31st, May 31st. That's 3 months. Oh, great question. What does a quarterly calendar look like? So a quarterly calendar, if you start in January, you break the year up into 4 quarters. So each quarter has 3 months. So it would be January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, and October, November, December. That's like the like fiscal calendar quarterly year. But a quarter is just a quarter of the year. It can start whenever you want it to start, whether that's February 28th or March 6th or March 1st tomorrow, right? Whenever you want that 3-month period to start, that's when it starts. So what's your mission? Be the healthiest version of yourself, end the quarter on a high, kick butt in all areas of your life, although that might be a little bit too general. But whatever it is, right? Come up with a mission that feels like, oh, yes, come May 31st, I want to something. And then we're going to take that mission. And as you're writing your missions and going through this process of figuring out your OKRs, feel free. And I know this is super open, but I'm going to make a generalized statement, and I hope that you will all validate this. But I'm going to make this a really safe space to be very open here. So there is no judgment. There is no goal too small, too insignificant, too stupid. It does not exist. So if you feel comfortable and a little bit bold, feel free to put your missions and then later your objectives and your key results into the chat. Share with us. Inspire everybody else that's on the call. We've got 80 people here with us right now live. And some of you are on camera, some of you are not, but we all want to learn from each other. That's why we're here. I also want to learn from you all. So if you're feeling bold, put your missions into the chat. And I'm excited to see them come through. And if you don't want to share them in public, feel free to also chat them to me directly and I'll share them anonymously. But again, there's a power in being in such a wonderful, big community of mutually minded supporters. So if you filled out your mission statement in the spreadsheet, you can move on to step number 2, which is breaking that mission down into objectives. Thank you. Someone sent in their mission. By May 31st, I want to be more of a leader at work. I love that. Being a leader. Awesome. You can then take that and break it down into objectives. So which of the areas of your life do you want to work on that will help create that end mission? To become an artist and do well in grad school, amazing. So what are the areas that you want to focus on in the upcoming quarter that will enable that to happen? What things might you want to, what objectives do you want to create that will help you become an artist, that will help you to do well in grad school, that will enable those missions to come to fruition? If I think back again to my gym example, and I think this is a reminder to myself that I need to fulfill my own goals of going to the gym because I have been slacking, admittedly. Some of the areas for living my healthiest life might be fitness. It might be nutrition. It might be intellectual health, right? Am I learning? Am I stretching myself? And then once you figured out your 3, max 5 areas that you want to focus on for your objectives, we're going to draft some key results. And this is where the measurable stuff, the timely stuff, the achievable stuff, all of those KPIs, key performance indicators, come into play. Now, if you're looking at the spreadsheet, which you're more than welcome to use, you're also more than welcome to throw it out. I think sometimes it's helpful to have a template or a model to work from. But if you want to use it, your objective would go in column B, your key results would go in column, I think this is E and F. And then you can come up with action steps in column I. But here's where you get to really drill down. And some of the examples I gave earlier for my living my best life, healthiest life example are, let's say for fitness, I want to go to the gym 25 times in the next quarter. I want to, run a mile. Maybe I'll even give myself a time, right? I want to be able to run a 10-minute mile. Oh my God, I'm giving myself really hard goals. And maybe a third one would be to run or walk a certain number of miles in the next 3 months, right? I want to get 50 miles on my pedometer in the next 3 months, right? So now I have 3 key results that support my fitness objective. We had a great question come in. I'll just read it. I'm self-employed, awesome, fellow entrepreneur, and I have an ongoing goal to find more and better paying clients. I have some experience setting goals, but when I don't see results, I get discouraged and give up. Do you have any suggestions? Yes. So first of all, failing to meet our goals does not mean that we are failures. And I know that sometimes feels hard to believe, but that is the best suggestion I can give, is to remember that failing to meet our goals does not make us failures. It says nothing about our viability as business owners, as human beings, as members of our community, whether that's our immediate friends and family or our larger community or our global community. You are not a failure for failing to meet a goal. And just to make sure that it sinks in, I'm going to say it one more time. No one is a failure for failing to meet a goal. A goal is a guide. It is an opportunity to clarify, again, to ourselves and to others sometimes, what we want to achieve. And sometimes we set goals for ourselves that aren't super reasonable, right? They're not achievable. And sometimes they're not even relevant. If we go back to the SMART goals model, we see so much online, and I'll also share for myself, I see so many people online who are building 6-figure businesses overnight, and they are, 23 years old. And I get envious sometimes. That sounds dope. I wish I could do that. But that's not aligned with the type of business I want to build. It's not relevant to my industry necessarily, although I'm sure that there are other amazing coaches doing great. And it's not achievable for me, given my needs and my way of working and the relationships that I want to build. That's not reasonable. It's not achievable for me, at least not right now. And so I would ask you, if you're failing to see results, are the goals that you're setting reasonable? Are they achievable? Or are you setting yourself up to fail to meet them? And I don't know you, but feel free, I'll share my contact information later. And if it's helpful, we can talk about this. But sometimes it's sometimes we set goals that are not achievable, that are not reasonable, that are not relevant to us, because it's easier to wallow in our failure to meet them than it is to push ourselves to achieve the goals that are relevant for us. And that might sound confusing, but what I mean is it's hard work being a human in this world. It is hard work to put in the hours, to try and make a living, to feed our families, to build a life that we envision. And frankly, it becomes increasingly difficult in the society that we live in to build the lives that we think we want for ourselves. It's hard. And it is much easier sometimes to sit back and say, I'm a failure. I'm not doing enough. I suck. Than it is to say, maybe I need to do different things. I need to refocus. I need to think of alternatives. And that mindset that it's our fault that things are hard means that things are going to be hard for a really long time. And so again, like, it is sometimes easier to wallow in failure than it is to rethink about how we want to set our goals and how we want to move forward. And what is achievable, and can we take smaller steps, and can we make smaller goals so that we have those quick wins? And I saw someone drop in the chat, mix in some of those procedural goals that are easy to track and easy to accomplish, right? Sometimes those quick wins make you feel so good, and they give you that momentum and that boost to keep going. 100%. Even things that are totally unrelated to business, sometimes setting goals around those to help build you up and show you how much control you have can be so helpful. And I'll use some basic examples, but a lot of these things are things that I've seen with my own clients, that setting goals around, having more family time, or going outside, or reaching out to one person and just letting them know what you're doing, what you're up to. Maybe they don't even know. Maybe people don't know that you're self-employed. Maybe they don't know how to help. But reaching out to one person can be enough of a goal. So start small. Okay, I can go down the rabbit hole on that for a very long time. I'm going to pull myself back because we've gotten some questions about the OKR spreadsheet. So just to clarify, we start by creating a lofty mission or goal, and then do we create objectives and then the key results? Yes, that is exactly how we start. So we start with the big lofty goal, then we come up with a few areas that we can create objectives around in order to make that mission, that lofty goal, come to fruition. And then we break those down into really tactical, actionable, measurable key results. Now, the last thing that I love in this spreadsheet that I'm going to call out is the column a little bit over to the right. You might need to scroll, called why. And this is the piece that we sometimes forget to take into account. This is the time where we get to connect our key results to our mission. Why do we want to do these things? And again, a lot of these things, they might be hard for us. Trying to run a 10-minute mile for me is hard. So why do I want to do it again? What's going to get me out of bed in the morning to go to the gym and run on a treadmill and feel hardcore on the struggle bus for a while until I get there? It's because running that 10-minute mile is going to help me feel healthy. It's going to make me feel powerful. I'm going to feel fast for maybe the first time in my life. And maybe that's enough of a reason, right? So identifying your why behind any of these key results is going to remind you why you're doing it in the first place, especially when sometimes things get a little bit tough and we feel like we might hit a bit of a slump. Reconnecting and revisiting that why is going to help you get re-engaged and reinvested. Now, as you're filling those out and as you're thinking about those with yourselves, I would encourage you as a next step from today to take these things and find an accountability buddy. And if you want to find one here, feel free to raise a hand or put your contact information into the meeting chat and let people know. Reach out to each other, use each other as alumni, as resources to build some accountability for these OKRs, whether it's about work or your personal life or your health or whatever your missions might be. This is a great opportunity to tap into this community or your friends, your family, whoever it is. Let them fill out their own version of the spreadsheet, come up with their own OKRs, and then set up some check-ins. I like every other week or once a month, that works, but whatever works for you. Just having some accountability can really make it feel a little bit easier and you feel a little bit more pressed to move forward. Make sure that you're following through. Now I'm going to move on because I see that we're running close to time and I want to leave some time for extra Q&A. So now it comes down to prioritization. Where do we start focusing? Because maybe we have 3, maybe 5 objectives and we've got a lot of different key results. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed and feel like, okay, what comes first? What comes second? Where do we spend our energy and focus? There are 2 primary matrices that I really like to use. One is the Eisenhower matrix, which is the axes urgent, not urgent, and important, not important. And based on what comes up for you, and these might be tasks, they might be goals, whatever it is, you can kind of start plugging them into this matrix. Is it urgent? Is it important? You should probably do it. If it's not urgent, but it's important, you can put it on the calendar for later. If it's not important, but it is urgent, can you get somebody else to do it? Even if maybe you have to pay them. And if it's not urgent and not important, why is it even on your plate, right? That means it's not relevant. Nobody's going to care. There isn't a lot of impact. So don't worry about it. Don't stress. The other matrix is the impact effort matrix. And this is sometimes tied to the Pareto principle, which is also called the 80-20 rule, which says 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your effort. So on the impact effort matrix, you've got high effort, high impact, low impact. The high effort, low impact stuff here in this bottom right-hand corner, those are the thankless tasks. You will work really hard on them and no one will care. Try not to do a lot of those. Then you've got the low effort, low impact. Those are like quick and easy things. Nobody really cares about them, but maybe they have to get done anyway, right? Responding to an email here or there. Those are things that you might be able to do in the in-between times. Then you've got low effort, high impact. These are your quick wins, right? These are the things where you can say, if I just get this out of the way, or if I kickstart this project, it's already going to be a win, right? And maybe there's extra visibility around that, especially at work. Maybe it gives you a boost of energy, right? If your goal is reach out to one person, that's low effort, high impact, right? That's a quick win. Then you've got high impact, high effort. These are the things that require focus, effort, time, energy, but they have a big ROI, a big return on investment. They're going to be a big impact for you, for your environment, whoever it is. Someone's going to be really thankful, even if it's you. And those are major projects. They probably need to be broken down and scheduled out. Cool. So I want you guys to think about these matrices as you go on from today. In an ideal case, I would have you do an exercise right now. And if you want to go back and watch the recording, you can pause here and look at the matrices and come up with your own, right? Draw it down on a piece of paper and fill in your key results and the tasks that might be associated with that and prioritize them. So come up with a few of the things that you want to achieve this year And using one of these matrices, doesn't really matter which one, you can categorize your goals and identify what order you want to tackle them. Now, important to remember here that a lot of things will be overlapping, right? I can start eating healthier at the same time as I start going to the gym more frequently. So it's not necessarily one has to be accomplished first before I start doing the second thing, but some things might be more important for me to tackle first for whatever reason, right? Setting up my doctor's appointments might take some time, but it's a quick win, so I might as well get on it now, if that makes sense. So this is kind of where I'm going to wrap up for today, because we talked about a lot and I want to leave some time for Q&A. So in the chat, if you feel bold, motivated, clear, or maybe even just confused, which is also totally fine, I encourage you to drop in the chat, what goal do you want to focus on? What do you want to take action on and prioritize this week? Maybe you can already think about one of the things that are on your OKR list that you can kickstart tomorrow. Maybe you don't know how to break it down so that it's achievable and you want to pop in a question. All things are welcome here, but I want to hear how you want to move forward from today. Yes, so we will be posting this on YouTube, right? I see a nod from Nicole. It's going to be on the playlist that you can access. I think there's a link above in the chat, and there is a link on the website. I think someone asked me earlier in the chat to include the link again to the spreadsheet. And again, you can download a copy to Excel or make a copy in Google Drive so you can have it live on your Google Drive. This week, set up a call with a new group class location option to grow the group class base. That sounds great. I love that. That is super actionable. Very clear. One call to set up your new group class. That's great. Connect with 3 new people at your target companies on LinkedIn. I love that. Really clear, really specific, and time bound, right? Because I created an artificial time bound for you, but this week, that's great. You can even do that maybe even tonight, but that's if you're feeling especially motivated and energized. I see a lot of focused faces, and I'm going to assume that you're all putting into your chats what you're going to focus on. Submit grad school application. That's so exciting. And work on a sketch. I love that. I'm going to put my email up later. Feel free to send it to me. This week, set up weekly goals and make sure that all your daily to-dos contribute to those goals. I love it. There is something about the cascading method of OKRs, even just the idea of that cascading diagram, that for me also, it puts a lot of things into perspective. Like all of a sudden, I want to figure out how each of the things on my list will contribute and cascade up to my ultimate goals. I love that. This week, be more aware of personal boundaries. Yes. And avoid saying yes to new things. Yes. Sometimes we have so much on our plates and it's very easy to say yes. But it's important to remember what you actually have capacity for. So that's great. Wow. Someone here is working on credentialing to becoming a medical provider. So good luck. That is awesome. And you're going to do that by end of day Friday. Sending you so much excitement from here in New York. Okay, cool. We have a great question. Having a family with small children and a full-time job, having the time to stop and think to gain clarity about your goals, it can be challenging, especially to make them specific and actionable. Do you have any thoughts about how to achieve life planning in the midst of life's hecticness? I think I'm seeing a lot of nods from people here. You are certainly not alone. And I don't have kids yet, but I think we can all relate to feeling overwhelmed at some point in our lives. That is so just like, yes, just nods all around. My biggest recommendation is to find a way to make it fun. Yeah, someone asked here, are the kids old enough to do the OKRs with you? Yeah, like, can you make it a fun activity, not just for yourself, but with your partner, even with your kids, right? Can you involve everybody so that it's not a thing that you have to do at midnight in the dark by yourself and it's heavy, but can you make it fun, light, enjoyable? One of the things that I hear from my clients a lot is that when they're setting goals outside of work, especially, it's really helpful to engage the people around them, especially the people who are going to be relevant to whether or not they're able to achieve their goals, right? Sometimes it's their spouse, sometimes it's their roommates, sometimes it's their parents or their kids. How can we make sure that the people around us are on board and might even be able to help hold us accountable to doing the things, especially when things get hectic? I have one client who also, she has 3 kids. She has a full-time job that oftentimes keeps her up working until midnight and beyond during the week. And it can be so hard for her to take time for herself. So hard. And one of her goals is to spend just a little bit more time taking care of herself, because she spends all day taking care of others, right? Whether it's the people at work, she's a doctor, so her patients, her kids, her husband, the dog, it's a lot to take on. So can you have your spouse, your kids say, Mom, hun, go take 10 minutes to decompress? Or I know you love that 30-minute workout video, like, we're good. We can do breakfast on our own today. Like, you go do that and take care of you. So how can you take all of life's hecticness and still find a way to build some cushion time, some bubble for yourself to make sure that you're getting what you need out of all of the hecticness? That's probably where I would start. But if you have more questions, feel free to send me a message. I'm also going to put my contact info up here on the screen, so you're welcome to reach out to me. Feel free to send me a message. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like. I'm happy to answer any other questions that come up, and I'm also happy to hang out a little bit longer if there are other questions. I see that there was something about breaking things down into smaller tasks. Oh, this is great. This is great advice. I don't know if I should call you out by name, but one of the participants have said that she's tried to create a list each day that only has 3 specific to-do items. If she does more, great, but if not, at least that's manageable. So that's great. Sometimes limiting the to-do list. Sometimes also, this might sound funny, I oftentimes recommend people to create a ta-da list in addition to their to-do list, which is a list of all the things that you actually do during the day. Oftentimes we have a laundry list of to-dos and we don't get to half of them, but it's not because we're lazy or procrastinating or unproductive. It's because a million other things came up that interrupted the original to-do list. So when we end up with a list where most things aren't crossed out, sometimes we feel bad about ourselves. But if we keep a ta-da list, we can actually keep track of all of the things that we accomplished. And that can help reinstill this feeling of productivity and accomplishment and like, I don't know if I can curse, holy crap, like I actually did a lot today. And even though I didn't get everything done on my to-do list, other priorities came up. And so I reprioritized on the fly. Which is the reframe that I would give there. So yeah, breaking things down into specific things is so helpful. Sometimes I tell people if a task on your list takes more than 10 to 15 minutes, it's probably not broken down enough. So there's probably a way that you can break that task down into even smaller, more specific chunks that will make them more approachable and more achievable And we'll also help you figure out how to fill them into your schedule, especially when you're really busy. It's much easier to find time to do a 5-minute activity than it is to sit down in a quiet, focused space and spend 3 hours diving deep into a project. There's some great resources being shared in here also. I'm going to link to the original Medium article from James Macaulay, where he shares his OKR template in case that's helpful context as you're revisiting this later on. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to ask them here or reach out. Don't be a stranger. Nicole or Suzanne, did we miss anything in the questions that came through during?
I think we got everyone, but if not, repost your question. A lot was coming our way. As I'm speaking, I see one new message. Oh no, just a nice compliment. But yes, Arielle will stay on for another 10, 15 minutes or so if the questions come flowing through, while people are maybe coming up with more questions. I just want to say thank you so much. This was inspiring and it was tactical. You gave us a lot of ideas, a lot of methods to use, which I think is important. And when I sit with someone and I'm doing career coaching, I think that's really providing options is huge. One thing is not going to, resonate with you. Try another thing.
Yep.
I think there are many to suit different personalities, different ways that people learn. Arielle and I have talked about that. Some of these things are too overwhelming. They have too many options. But yes, start with the ones that she came up with. This will be available. The presentation will be available. But let's see, go ahead and ask your questions now. As you leave, I'll say that there is a survey. Please take, 2 minutes to fill out that survey. It will pop up on your screen in your browser. So, and again, Arielle will be back in a month talking about leading with influence, which I think is a great topic. And we
really excited for that one.
Yeah. We even saw today that was someone's goal, right? In the next 3 months to learn or to be a leader at work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's might feel lofty or vague, but then that's where you focus in.
Yep.
You focus in on more concrete objectives, and you might need help coming up with those. So we acknowledge that this is not something that you necessarily need to do alone. It's hard to do alone. So there are options to find support. I will share a link in a moment about how to find support through career advising, alumni career advising at Tufts. It depends on what school you graduated from, but the different schools offer different options for one-on-one. I think there are great groups out there. I was just on my public library website looking at books to read, and I noticed they have a group. They have a job search and networking group, free, and with like Arielle, an executive coach who lives in my location. I actually think it's virtual. So group support, small groups support, we call them success groups, job search success teams, where you can talk with other people about what their challenges are and sort of how they're getting support, what they're using in terms of tools. That's great. And there was another thing I was going to mention too. So coaching, and looking out there for career coaching, executive coaching, leadership coaching, life coaching. A lot of what we talked about today really kind of some of it falls into the category of life coaching. So, I don't have a link right now there are some great links for identifying a career coach or other type of coach. One of the resources that comes to mind is the National Career Development Association, the NCDA. They have a directory of licensed career coaches. Local Career Counseling Consortium, that's the acronym CCC. They are all over the country. They have directories of licensed coaches. So you have options, and many coaches offer a first consult for free. I'll mention that. And so you need to get on their websites and, and look for that. But I like the group coaching. I like the group coaching model that is often, that is offered for free in many locations, community centers, libraries, different places. Again, virtual, and some of them are tailored. They are tailored to your career stage, your sort of in life, what's whether you're a parent or a caregiver, or you're new to the work world, you've just been out, so it's there are so many great resources, and we have a lot of those resources listed on the Alumni Career Services website. I mentioned the career coaching, but I have a whole section on career resources, an A to Z list, and a lot of, sort of job search, the nuts and bolts kinds of things. So does anyone else have a question? Oh, thank you, Susanna, for posting the link to Alumni Career Services.
I'll also add really quickly, sorry to interject, if anybody is looking for a particular type of coach, I am happy to share referrals. If you send me an email or a LinkedIn message with what kind of group you're looking for, what kind of coach you're looking for, what kind of support you need. I have really excellent friends and colleagues in the coaching community. So if I can be helpful to connect you to other resources, I'm really happy to be that connector and linchpin for you.
So I'm getting a lot of thank yous, not many, not many more questions. Do you mind throwing your slide back up with your contact information?
Sure.
And you have a newsletter, is that right?
I do. People can access it. They can sign up on my website. I hope the link for it works. I actually just accidentally closed out of my PowerPoint, but I will put my email address into the chat if anybody wants to reach out. And if anybody wants to connect on LinkedIn, I'll also drop that in, linkedin.com/in/Arielle.
So again, this will be available in another week or so on the YouTube playlist, where we already have about 30 or so of our previous webinars. Many of our webinars are facilitated by Tufts alums who are coaches, and you can see their specialty and the contact information for them in their presentation, or you could just look them up on LinkedIn. And we do try to have, different folks facilitate our webinars. And in fact, we'll have a new face in April and in May. So from the, coaching community. But I think it feels like everyone is sort of is leaving and saying thank you. So again, I want to thank you to Arielle. This was, I think, really motivating in terms of next steps, concrete next steps, tools to use. And Susanna, my colleague from the Career Center, thank you for helping out with the webinar tonight. So if that's it, we'll let you go. And thank you for tuning in.
Thank you all.
Thank you.